The Persistence drifted toward Nexus Station like a wounded whale approaching shore. Ambassador Elena Vasquez pressed her face to the observation deck's viewport, watching alien vessels scatter from their approach vector. She couldn't blame them. After 3 centuries of interstellar travel, her ship looked like exactly what the Galactic Council believed it to be, a decrepit relic held together by desperation and stubbornness. "They are laughing at us," Lieutenant Commander Marcus Chen said, joining her at the window. His voice carried the bitter edge of a man who'd spent years watching humanity get dismissed as a galaxy's newest joke. Elena studied the sleek vessels that surrounded them. The hegemony ships gleamed like polished obsidian, their surfaces unmarked by the cosmic radiation that had scarred the Persistence's hull. The crystalline collective's vessels shimmered with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed in complex mathematical sequences. Even the peaceful Verdant Alliance flew ships that looked like living organisms, their organic curves a testament to biotechnology humanity could barely comprehend. "Let them laugh," Elena replied. Underestimation has always been humanity's greatest advantage. The communications console crackled to life. "Human vessel, this is Nexus Control. You are cleared for docking bay 9-7. Please maintain minimum velocity and avoid any sudden maneuvers that might compromise your structural integrity." Chen's jaw tightened. "Bay 9-7? That's where they dock garbage scows and mining barges." "I'm aware." Elena turned from the window, her diplomatic training suppressing the anger that threatened to surface. "Send our acknowledgement. And Marcus, make sure our engineering teams are ready for inspection. I want every system looking as primitive as possible." As the Persistence limped into the docking bay, Elena felt the familiar weight of her family's secret pressing down on her shoulders. Her great-grandmother had been one of the original colonists, one of the few who knew why humanity's Exodus ships had been built the way they were. The knowledge had been passed down through generations, waiting for the day when humanity would need it most. That day was approaching faster than she'd hoped. The docking bay's artificial gravity took hold, and the Persistence settled onto the platform with a groan that echoed through the station's superstructure. Elena could almost hear the alien observers shaking their heads in amazement that the ship had survived its journey at all. "Ambassador," came a voice from the bridge. "The Hegemony delegation is requesting an immediate audience. They're insistent." Elena smiled grimly. The Hegemony controlled 40% of known space, their military might built on the conquest of smaller species. They'd been circling humanity's scattered colonies like vultures, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Today's council session would determine whether humanity would be granted protected status or left to fend for itself against superior forces. "Tell them I'll meet with them after the formal session," Elena replied. "Diplomatic protocol must be observed." The next hour passed in a blur of preparation. Elena donned her formal diplomatic robes, simple, practical garments that stood in stark contrast to the elaborate attire favored by other species. She reviewed her notes one final time, knowing that every word she spoke in the coming hours could determine humanity's fate. The council chamber was a marvel of engineering, a vast sphere where representatives from dozens of species floated in individual atmospheric bubbles suited to their biology. Elena's bubble was positioned in the lower tier, a subtle reminder of humanity's junior status in galactic politics. High Chancellor Zephyr of the Hegemony spoke first, his forearms gesturing dramatically as he addressed the assembly. "Honored delegates, we gather today to consider the petition of the human species for protected status. While we sympathize with their plight, we must ask ourselves, what has humanity contributed to galactic civilization? What do they offer beyond their amusing determination to survive in vessels that should have been scrapped centuries ago?" Laughter rippled through the chamber. Elena felt each chuckle like a physical blow, but she kept her expression neutral. The Hegemony's representative continued, his voice dripping with condescension. "The humans arrived in a ship that belongs in a museum. Their technology is primitive, their military capabilities negligible. They claim to have fled some great catastrophe, but refuse to provide details. How can we trust a species that won't even tell us their true history?" Elena rose from her seat, her movements deliberate and calm. "If I may address the council." Chancellor Zephyr waved dismissively. "By all means, please, enlighten us about humanity's glorious past." Elena activated her personal communicator, sending a coded message to the Persistence. In the ship's restricted section, systems that had lain dormant for 3 centuries began to stay. Ancient computers ran diagnostics on weapons that predated the Galactic Council itself. Honored delegates, Elena began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. You're right to question our history. Humanity did flee a catastrophe, but not the kind you might imagine. We fled from ourselves, from what we had become and what we had built. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the assembly. 300 years ago, humanity possessed technology that could crack planets like eggs. We had weapons that could ignite stars, fleets that could glass entire systems. We had become gods of destruction, and we were terrified of our own power. The laughter had stopped. Elena could feel the sudden tension in the chamber, the shift from amusement to uncertainty. Our ancestors made a choice, she continued. They could have conquered the galaxy, but instead they chose to run. They built ships like the Persistence, vessels designed to look weak, to hide our true capabilities. They scattered across the stars, hoping that distance and time would help us forget what we had learned. Chancellor Zephyr's expression had changed from amusement to suspicion. You're suggesting that your primitive vessel is somehow camouflaged. Elena smiled, and for the first time since entering the chamber, she let her diplomatic mask slip. I'm suggesting that you might want to reconsider your position on humanity's protected status. Because if you force us to defend ourselves, you will discover exactly why our ancestors chose exile over empire. The chamber erupted in chaos as delegates began shouting questions and demands. Elena stood calmly in the center of the storm, her hand resting on her communicator. One more coded message, and the galaxy would learn the truth about humanity's relic ship. The choice was theirs. The council chamber fell silent as Elena's words hung in the air like a charged particle field before a lightning strike. Chancellor Zephyr's forearms crossed in a gesture of barely contained aggression, his scales shifting from a usual bronze to a deep, threatening red. Ambassador Vasquez, he said, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. Are you threatening this council? Elena remained standing, her hand still resting on her communicator. Around the chamber, delegates whispered frantically to their aides, their earlier amusement replaced by growing unease. The crystalline collective's representative pulsed with rapid, agitated colors. The Verdant Alliance's ambassador had actually retreated deeper into their biosuit, as if seeking protection. I'm providing context, Chancellor, Elena replied calmly. The Council asks why humanity refuses to share its history. I'm explaining that our history is complicated. Complicated. Zephyr's laugh was sharp and bitter. You arrive in a ship that's barely holding together, claim to possess ancient weapons of mass destruction, and call it complicated? This is either a bluff of cosmic proportions or a confession of war crimes. Elena felt the weight of centuries pressing down on her shoulders. Her great-grandmother's journal had described this moment, the inevitable day when humanity will be forced to choose between extinction and revelation. The journal had been very specific about what that choice would cost. Perhaps, she said, we should adjourn this session to allow the council time to consider. No. Zephyr's voice cut through her words like a blade. If humanity possesses the weapons you claim, then this council has a right to inspect them. We cannot allow potentially dangerous technology to remain hidden. The chamber erupted in voices as other delegates joined the debate. Elena watched as the political dynamics shifted in real time. The smaller species, those who had suffered under hegemony expansion, suddenly looked at humanity with new interest. The larger powers, however, were clearly alarmed by the possibility of a hidden rival. The hegemony seconds Chancellor Zephyr's motion, announced General Thakmore, the military representative whose species had been absorbed into the hegemony 2 centuries ago. Any species possessing weapons of mass destruction must submit to immediate inspection. Elena's communicator vibrated with an incoming message from the Persistence. Commander Chen's voice came through on her private channel, barely audible above the chaos. Ambassador, we're reading massive energy signatures from hegemony vessels. They are powering up weapon systems. I think they are planning to force the issue. Elena closed her eyes briefly. The moment of choice had arrived sooner than expected. Marcus, our special systems ready. Standing by. But once we activate them, there's no going back. The whole galaxy will know. I understand. Hold position and await my signal. Elena opened her eyes and found Chancellor Zephyr staring at her with predatory intensity. The alien leader had clearly noticed her private communication and correctly interpreted it as preparation for something significant. "Delegates," Elena said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. "I need to tell you a story. 3 centuries ago, humanity discovered something in the ruins of an ancient civilization. We call them the Builders, a species that had existed billions of years before any of us achieved spaceflight." The chamber gradually quieted as delegates recognized the gravity in her tone. The Builders had created weapons that could manipulate fundamental forces, gravity, electromagnetism, even time itself. They had built an empire that spanned entire galactic clusters. And then, suddenly, they were gone, vanished without a trace. Elena began walking around the perimeter of her atmospheric bubble, her movement hypnotic in the chamber's artificial gravity. At first, humanity was excited by the discovery. We reverse-engineered their technology, built weapons that could reshape reality itself. We thought we were inheriting the galaxy's greatest legacy. We were wrong. She paused, meeting the eyes of delegates around the chamber. We found their final message, carved into the quantum structure of space itself. The Builders hadn't vanished. They had destroyed themselves. Their weapons had become so powerful that they had literally torn holes in the fabric of existence. Their empire had collapsed into dimensional fractures that still exist today, regions of space where the laws of physics break down. Chancellor Zephyr's expression had shifted from anger to fascination. "You're saying humanity possesses Builder technology?" "I'm saying humanity learned from a Builder's mistake. Our ancestors realized that some power is too dangerous to use. So they built ships like the Persistence, vessels designed to hide our true capabilities while we search for a way to live without destroying ourselves." Elena's communicator vibrated again. This time, the message was from Nexus Station Security Chief. "Ambassador, we have a problem. Hegemony forces are moving to surround your vessel. They are demanding immediate access to your ship's restricted sections." Elena sighed. The hegemony had made their choice, and now humanity would have to make theirs. "Chancellor Zephyr," she said, her voice carrying a note of finality, "I'm going to ask you one more time to reconsider. Humanity has spent 3 centuries trying to avoid this moment. We've hidden our true nature, accepted ridicule and dismissal, all to prevent what's about to happen." Zephyr's scales had shifted to deep crimson, a sign of absolute determination. Humanity will submit to inspection or be declared an enemy of the Galactic Council. Those are your options. Elena nodded slowly. "Then I'm sorry for what comes next." She activated her communicator, sending the final coded message to the Persistence. In the ship's deepest sections, systems that had been dormant for 3 centuries came fully online. Ancient computers began calculating targeting solutions, while weapons that humanity had sworn never to use again powered up for the first time in generations. The chamber's lights flickered as the station's sensors detected the energy surge from the human vessel. Emergency alarms began wailing as the Persistence shed its carefully maintained facade like a snake shedding its skin. "What have you done?" Zephyr demanded, his voice carrying the first note of uncertainty Elena had heard from him. Elena looked out through the chamber's massive viewport at her ship. The Persistence was no longer the battered relic that had limped into the docking bay. Ancient hull plates were retracting, revealing weapons arrays that defied current understanding of physics. The ship's true form was emerging, sleek, predatory, and absolutely terrifying. "I've reminded the galaxy why humanity chose exile over empire," Elena said quietly, "and why that choice is about to end." The hegemony's war fleet, which had been moving to surround the human vessel, suddenly found themselves facing something that shouldn't exist. The Persistence had transformed from a decrepit colony ship into a weapon of almost incomprehensible power. Chancellor Zephyr was about to learn that some relics are better left undisturbed. The transformation of the Persistence sent shockwaves through Nexus Station's superstructure. What had appeared to be a ramshackle colony ship now revealed itself as something far more sinister. Hull plates had retracted to expose weapon arrays that seemed to bend light around them. The ship's original angular design had been replaced by curves that suggested predatory intent, as if the vessel had been designed by someone who understood the geometry of destruction. Chancellor Zephyr pressed against his atmospheric bubble's transparent wall, his forearms trembling with rage and dawning fear. "This is impossible." Our sensors detected no advanced technology when you arrived. Elena watched through the viewport as hegemony ships began taking defensive positions around the station. Their crews were brave, she had to admit, but they had no idea what they were facing. Builder technology doesn't register on conventional sensors. Chancellor, it exists in dimensions your instruments can't detect. The station's communications array crackled to life with frantic messages from ship captains demanding explanations. Elena could hear the fear in their voices as they realized their weapons were trained on something that defied their understanding of physics. Nexus control to all vessels came the emergency broadcast. Unknown energy signatures detected from the human ship. All civilian traffic is ordered to evacuate the system immediately. Elena's communicator buzzed with an incoming message from Commander Chen. Ambassador, we're reading massive weapons signatures from the hegemony fleet. They are preparing to fire. Elena nodded grimly. The hegemony had built their empire on the principle that superior firepower could solve any problem. They were about to learn that some problems couldn't be solved with conventional weapons. Marcus, she said into her communicator, our defensive systems online. All systems nominal. The ship's combat AI is requesting permission to engage active defense protocols. Elena hesitated. Once the Persistence revealed its true defensive capabilities, there would be no hiding what humanity had become. Permission granted. But remember, we're here to protect ourselves, not start a war. Through the viewport, Elena watched as the hegemony flagship began charging its primary weapons. The massive dreadnought was 3 times the size of the Persistence, its hull bristling with enough firepower to level a small moon. Chancellor Zephyr had clearly decided that the best response to an unknown threat was overwhelming force. Chancellor, Elena said, turning to face the alien leader, I strongly advise you to order your ships to stand down. You're about to make a mistake that will cost thousands of lives. Zephyr's laugh was harsh and bitter. You're outnumbered 50-1, Ambassador. Your ship may have impressive camouflage, but it's still just one vessel against my entire fleet. Elena felt a familiar sadness wash over her. This was exactly what humanity had feared, the moment when their hidden nature would force them to choose between survival and genocide. Her great-grandmother's journal had described this feeling, the weight of knowing that humanity's next action would reshape the galaxy forever. Last chance, Chancellor, Elena said quietly. Order your ships to withdraw, and we can still find a peaceful solution. The hegemony does not retreat, Zephyr snarled. Fire! The hegemony flagship's main cannon erupted in a beam of coherent energy that could have vaporized a city. The blast struck the Persistence directly, engulfing the human ship in a brilliant explosion that lit up the entire system. For a moment, the council chamber was silent except for the hum of life support systems. Then, as the energy discharge faded, the Persistence emerged from the blast completely unharmed. Not a single hull plate had been damaged. Impossible, Zephyr whispered. Elena activated her communicator. Marcus, return fire. 1 shot, minimal power. Target their weapon systems only. Understood. 1 warning shot coming up. The Persistence responded with a weapon that existed in mathematical dimensions the hegemony couldn't comprehend. What emerged from the human ship wasn't a beam or projectile. It was a localized distortion of space-time itself, a ripple in reality that touched the flagship's weapons array and simply negated it. The hegemony dreadnought's entire forward section vanished. Not destroyed, not vaporized. It simply ceased to exist, as if it had never been built. The massive warship listed to one side, its crew undoubtedly stunned by the realization that their most powerful vessel had been casually neutered by a single shot. The silence in the council chamber was deafening. What was that? Stammered the Crystalline Collective's representative. Elena felt the weight of generations pressing down on her shoulders. That was a builder weapon operating at approximately 1% of its maximum output. The shot was designed to disable, not destroy. Chancellor Zephyr's scales had shifted to a pale gray, the color of shock and disbelief. You could have killed everyone on that ship. We could have killed everyone in this system, Elena corrected. Chancellor, humanity has spent 3 centuries trying to avoid this moment. We've hidden our true nature, accepted insults and threats, all to prevent what's happening now. She gestured toward the viewport, where the Persistence now floated like a predator among sheep. Our ancestors discovered builder technology and realized it was too dangerous to use. They built ships like the Persistence to hide our capabilities while we searched for a way to live without destroying ourselves. The Verdant Alliance's ambassador, who had remained silent throughout the confrontation, finally spoke. Then why reveal yourselves now? Why not continue hiding? Elena turned to face the plant-like being, her expression heavy with regret. Because the hegemony forced our hand. They were planning to conquer our colonies, to enslave or eliminate humanity. We tried diplomacy, but some species only understand force. She activated her communicator again. Marcus, status report. The hegemony fleet is withdrawing. They are requesting immediate ceasefire, and they are asking for negotiations. Elena nodded. Tell them we'll discuss terms after the council session concludes. She turned back to the assembled delegates, many of whom were staring at her with a mixture of awe and terror. Delegates, humanity stands at a crossroads. We can continue hiding, pretending to be weak while hoping no one forces us to defend ourselves. Or we can join the galactic community as equals, contributing our knowledge while working to ensure that builder technology is never used for conquest. Chancellor Zephyr's voice was barely a whisper. You could conquer the entire galaxy. Yes, Elena replied simply. We could, but our ancestors chose exile over empire for a reason. The Builder's final message was clear. Absolute power leads to absolute destruction. We have no intention of repeating their mistake. The chamber erupted in voices as delegates began frantically discussing the implications of humanity's revelation. Elena stood in the center of the storm, knowing that the galaxy would never be the same. The age of underestimating humanity was over. The final vote took place 18 hours after Elena's revelation. The Galactic Council chamber had been cleared of non-essential personnel, leaving only the core delegates to decide humanity's fate. Elena sat in her atmospheric bubble, watching as representatives from 43 species debated the future of galactic civilization. The debate had been intense and often heated. Some delegates argued for immediate military action against humanity, demanding that the builder weapon threat be eliminated before it could destabilize the galaxy. Others pushed for complete isolation, suggesting that humanity should be quarantined in their corner of space until the technology could be safely contained. But a surprising number of delegates had supported Elena's proposal for integration. The smaller species, those who had suffered under the expansion of larger powers, saw humanity as a potential protector. The scientific communities were fascinated by the possibility of studying builder technology under controlled conditions. Even some of the major powers had begun to see the advantages of having humanity as an ally rather than an unknown threat. Chancellor Zephyr had been notably quiet during the final hours of debate. His military advisors had spent the time analyzing the footage of the Persistence's transformation, trying to understand how humanity had hidden such advanced technology for so long. The reports they delivered had only deepened the hegemony's concern. The chair recognizes a council moderator for the final vote, announced the ancient being who had overseen the proceedings. Elena felt her heart racing as the moderator began reading the formal resolution. 3 centuries of hiding, 3 centuries of careful isolation had led to this moment. Humanity's future would be decided by the voices of species they had barely known existed. Resolution 847C. The petition of the human species for full membership in the Galactic Council, with the understanding that humanity will share their knowledge of builder technology under strict international oversight. The vote is as follows. Elena held her breath as the tally was read. 43 votes cast, 22 needed for passage. The smaller species voted in favor, as expected. The scientific community supported the resolution. The neutral zones were split, but leaning toward acceptance. The major powers were the deciding factor. The Crystalline Collective voted in favor, their representatives citing the potential for technological advancement. The Verdant Alliance abstained, unwilling to commit to either side. The Hegemony delegation requests the floor for final statement, Chancellor Zephyr announced. Elena felt her stomach drop. The Hegemony controlled the largest block of votes in the Council. Their position could determine the outcome. Zephyr rose slowly, his forearms spread in a gesture of formal address. Honored delegates, the Hegemony has considered this matter carefully. We have seen the power that humanity possesses, and we understand the threat it represents. We have also seen their restraint, their choice to hide rather than conquer. He paused, looking directly at Elena. The hegemony has built its power on the principle that strength determines survival. Today, we have encountered a species that possesses ultimate strength but chooses not to use it. This changes our perspective. Elena couldn't believe what she was hearing. The hegemony, the galaxy's most aggressive expansionist power, was about to vote in favor of humanity's integration. The hegemony votes in favor of Resolution 847C, Zephyr announced. We believe that humanity's knowledge of builder technology could benefit all species, and that their demonstrated restraint makes them suitable partners rather than threats. The chamber erupted in voices as delegates realized the implications. With the hegemony's support, the resolution would pass easily. Elena felt tears streaming down her face as she watched the final tally appear on the chamber's main display. Resolution 847C passes by a vote of 28 in favor, 12 opposed, 3 abstentions, the moderator announced. The human species is hereby granted full membership in the Galactic Council, with all rights and responsibilities thereof. Elena stood slowly, her legs shaking with relief and exhaustion. On behalf of humanity, I accept the Council's decision. We pledge to honor our commitments and work toward a peaceful galaxy where advanced technology serves all species. The chamber gradually emptied as delegates departed for their ships, many of them already planning how to approach humanity's new role in galactic politics. Elena remained in her bubble, watching through the viewport as the Persistence prepared for departure. Chancellor Zephyr approached the station, his expression unreadable. "Ambassador, I have a question." Elena nodded, still processing the magnitude of what had just happened. When your ship fired on our dreadnought, it could have destroyed us all. Instead, it chose to disable our weapons. That level of precision, that restraint under fire, it suggests something beyond just advanced technology. Elena met his gaze steadily. "What's your question, Chancellor? Is humanity actually as peaceful as they claim, or are they simply too smart to start a war they could win too easily?" Elena considered the question carefully. "Chancellor, humanity learned something from studying the Builder's ruins. Power without wisdom leads to destruction. We've spent 3 centuries developing that wisdom, learning to use our strength responsibly. Today's demonstration wasn't about showing our military might. It was about proving that we can be trusted with the power we possess." Zephyr's scale shifted to a thoughtful blue. "The galaxy is about to change dramatically, Ambassador. Other species will test your resolve, probe for weaknesses. Some will try to steal your technology. Others will try to manipulate you into using it for their benefit." "We're prepared for that," Elena replied. "Humanity has been preparing for this day for 3 centuries. As the Persistence undocked from Nexus Station, Elena felt the weight of history settling around her. The ship that had arrived as a laughingstock was departing as a flagship of the galaxy's newest major power. The age of hiding was over, and humanity was about to take its place on the galactic stage. But Elena knew that the real test was just beginning. The galaxy had accepted humanity as members, but they would need to prove themselves worthy of the trust that had been placed in them. The builder technology that had been humanity's greatest secret was about to become their greatest responsibility. As the Persistence entered hyperspace, Elena thought about her great-grandmother's journal, about the generations of humans who had carried the burden of their hidden nature. They had dreamed of a day when humanity could emerge from the shadows and join the galactic community as equals. That day had finally come. The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. The question now was whether humanity would prove worthy of the power they had been forced to reveal. Elena believed they would. After 3 centuries of restraint, humanity was ready to help build a better future for all species. The age of the relic ship was over. The age of humanity had begun.